I'm out in Western Massachusetts. It is cloudy and rainy over here, classic fall day, but not as bad as we've had all kinds of crazy stuff all over the country. In fact, Donald, you were saying had no power earlier this week.
That is correct. I'm out in Berkeley, Oakland area, and because of wind, PG&E cut the power. So.
Oh, really? They actually cut it proactively to prevent problems?
Yes. It'd be nice if they could just put the power lines in the ground. Then we don't have to cut the power, but I think that costs too much. So they just cut the power.
Right. Now, Matt, where are you coming to us from? Have we got you muted, Matt?
There we go. Yeah, it didn't want to unmute me. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in terms of weather today, the sun's out now, but about 2-3 hours ago we had some strong wind and storms. So I think there were some trees down in the area. Power flickered in and out. I was like, wait, my folks in Atlanta, they've been without power all day, so I was worried I was going to lose connectivity and power, but we're good to go here. The sun's shining, so I'm one of the lucky ones. Just had to restart the router a few times.
Yeah, get your connection going again. We have Rob just chatted in. He says he's from Baltimore, Maryland. They've had a good soaking there, 2+ inches of rain. So yeah, they've got hurricane washout coming up over there. How about Joseph? Where are you from?
I'm actually, normally I'm in New York City, but I'm actually coming to you live from Arizona, the greater Phoenix area.
Oh, all right. The West Coast. And yeah, much better weather than New York metro area right now. All right, we're at 3 o'clock. We've got about 12 attendees in here. So for the attendees, yeah, we were just saying, go ahead and tell us where you come from, and we'd like to hear who we've got represented on the panel here. But we should just jump right in here and get going. My name's John Wall. I'm the moderator this afternoon. I am with Trust Insights, a data science consultancy that lights up dark data. It's basically a boutique firm for marketing executives. We help companies figure out what their attribution models are, what marketing programs are working for them, things like that. And so I am also the producer of the Marketing Over Coffee podcast. So I've been covering marketing and tech for over a decade over there, but my financial knowledge is quite limited, really not much beyond the fact that I have a couple of bank accounts. So that's why we have a bunch of panelists here who can talk about banking and finance and what's going on there. We have Joseph Martinez is with us. He is the Chief Procurement Officer at BNY Mellon. You just talked to us out of Arizona. Joseph, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Donald Lee is with us. He's a Senior Director of Global Sourcing at Visa. I got a chance to chat with him a little bit last week as part of our warm-up. Along with being at a huge name brand Visa, he also spent a lot of time working at Disney. So he hopefully will have a chance to tell us a few things about some of those big brands and things that he's done there. Donald, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And Matt Corsi rounds out the panel for us here. He's the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Digital at Truist, company based out of Charlotte now. Matt, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Actually, it's afternoon. I don't know why I'm still on morning. I do still have my coffee, but we are well beyond that. So let's jump in. One of the things that has prompted our discussion here today is just that there's so much going on with ad tech and marketing tech. When we were doing our initial warm-up, we were talking about how the Lumascape just has thousands of vendors. I mean, everything is just completely wide open, and it's still kind of Wild West in this space. And so from each of the panelists, I'd like to hear from a little bit as far as, what are you watching as far as tools and types of tools? And a bigger theme too is, doing strategic advisement, not just kind of figuring out what's going on there, but seeing if you can actually move the whole organization in the right direction as far as marketing based on what you're looking at and where you're going. And I'm going to lead off with Donald because he was the one who inspired us to kind of think about the strategic side of things. But give us your kind of overview of the space. What's going on and what's on your mind?
Well, the thing that's interesting when I look at ad tech and martech, the Lumascape is huge. And what we're finding is that everyone has something unique that they want to do. And so the piece is figuring out what everyone's looking for, where that consistency exists, saying these are the best tools for you. But that is a challenge because somebody says, well, this tool does the exact same thing that tool does, and I like this one better. So it's figuring out what that common ground is to bring folks to that place. And part of it is, how do we measure? How do we make sure that what we're getting is going to work? how do we measure it, and how do we measure that it is an effective tool? The challenges that we have is that we've got a lot of different tools out there. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, based upon the size of your organization, what's the right number of tools that we should have? I probably am not the expert to tell you, hey, if you're at $1 billion, you need to have this many tools. But I think what's important is figuring out what that tool piece is, that toolkit is, and then what is a strategy to kind of get everyone in alignment. Because right now we've got a lot of, I call it rogue spending, but we've got folks out saying, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want to work on. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, what is the overall impact that people want? Great example is social listening. What we found is that people had all these different social listening tools. So what we did was we kind of ran a large RFI, like what is everyone looking for? We went out to the market, we came back with examples, we came back with solutions. And it was challenging to get everyone in the globe to one social listening solution. Took a lot of influencing and conversations, but we were able to do that because what we were able to show folks was the money you were spending got you this. The money you spending moving forward can get you this. And being able to make that conversation and get folks to understand that helped us to transition so that we were all on one social listening platform.
Joseph, how about for you? Has social listening been on your radar, and have you done any of this benchmarking? Do you have an idea of like how many tools you should have in the stack?
To be candid with you, I don't. but my team actually works very closely with marketing around a number of these initiatives, and so we also have a dedicated digital organization where we're looking at digital horizontally across the various product streams that we have. And so when we look at all the platforms and the software that are making up our marketing technology stack, we look at it in terms of like analytics, campaign tracking. We're looking at in terms of software and lead generation, sales enablement software, and social media platforms. And so our spend there is quite high, but our priority right now is really looking at how do we consolidate that down and actually ensure that we're getting the appropriate level of return. And a large part of it is also the experience in terms of ease of use, in terms of how we're trying to do this. So we're also trying to make sure that we can integrate across, we're in 38 countries, right? And so it's really important for us to be able to look at that holistically with local language requirements, with data privacy requirements, to try and ensure that what we're putting together is a comprehensive program from a digital perspective that is going to give us the outcome that we need. You got to remember that we are actually more of a business to business. We're an asset management company. We are a bank, but we don't really do retail banking. And so I'll give you a non-digital view. This is a $10 bill. And this Alexander Hamilton, who is on this, is the founder of our bank. Okay, and so we have a long history, 237 years of what we've been doing. And so, we've had to reinvent ourselves along the line. And so as we look at it from a brand, as we look at it from a digital, as we look at it from what we're doing from an advertising perspective, that there's been a lot of evolution through the various iterations that are now known as Bank of New York Mellon.
Okay, I want to jump. We do have a question in the queue asking about how do clients handle and perform agency financial audits? So if I get that right, as you're screening agencies, what kind of screening do you do to make sure that you can do business with them, that they're qualified? And start with Donald.
Audits. So, one of the things that I'll say working in the financial industry is that we have to be at the same level of rigor as our clients. So, when people see Visa, whatever banking industries we work with, we adopt their financial rigor as well, which means there is auditing. There is several layers of auditing that happens. So to work with us, you must understand that you are going to go through some audits. Now, some of the audits are, hey, did you buy the media that you said you were going to buy? The other piece is, are there efficiency and effective audits that are out there? So one of the things that we've tried to bring from a sourcing place to the marketing team are, these are ways that we can measure digital effectiveness. These are ways that we can measure how effective a TV campaign is, or whatever that may be. So audits are a part of life and the financial industry. And it's kind of this is what you sign up to work with us. And if an agency says, I'm not going to participate, then it's kind of, they've excluded themselves from the process. It's, you know, it's just part of what we do. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. I think you're right on. I was going to ask Joseph,
All right.
anything to go with that? Anything else that you guys do or other views?
Yeah, well, I think we look at it from a couple of different perspectives. We look at it again within the buying channel. We look at it within the campaign that we're actually doing, but more holistically, because we are a highly regulated industry, we have to follow what's called essentially a third-party governance program. And that third-party governance program has a very detailed component. It's basically, if you look at the regulatory 213-29, that's where the OCC is saying these are the minimum standards that you need to have as you're looking at that relationship across your portfolio. It doesn't matter whether it's marketing, advertising, or technology, as an example. And what we do is we actually have very sophisticated tools and partners that are helping us to do some of that assessment across those platforms to make sure that they're fit for purpose.
Okay. Another topic, changing gears here. We've actually lost Matt. I'm sure Tina will rope him back in when we get a chance or he gets to reboot. But marketing is, all about changing the behavior of prospects and customers, trying to get them to where you want them to go. But of course, there's been no greater behavior change than this year, where everything has been torn to pieces. So I'd love to hear how things have changed in the past 8 months as far as moving to different campaigns or changing to different vendors, trying to get out of deals, trying to cut great deals. Donald, have you got anything you can throw out to us on that front?
Yes. One of the challenges that happened with us, Visa is a sponsor of the Olympics. So when the Olympics went away, when the Olympics got delayed, it was, what are we supposed to do? How are we going to handle it? And it was putting together, campaigns got reduced, budgets became reduced. So that's one of the things that happened. One of the things that I will say is we were very fortunate that our CEO said, hey, during this pandemic, we're not going to lay anyone off. That's a Visa employee. So that's been something that I would say we're very fortunate of. But at the same time, with that happening, it was sourcing. You need to find this opportunity because we got to make up X amount of dollars. And so going into next year, it's also, we need to make up X amount of dollars. One of the things that I think happens in financial situations is sourcing becomes very important. We become the team to help find efficiencies, help to make dollars go further. This happened with the recession in 2009. It was sourcing, help us to get, over this hump. So the pandemic has been horrible for the business and for the economy and everything else, but this does give sourcing an opportunity to kind of say, okay, folks, this is how we can help, manage through some of these problems. This is how we can help to make some of the dollars go further.
And Joseph, how about for you guys?
Well, for us, it's been really interesting because there's really been a shift based on the impact that COVID-19 has had, right? And so as you're going through that, there's a number of different physical events that no longer could actually occur. We also saw that there was opportunities for us from looking at how we wanted to rebrand certain types of activities that we were doing and transition them into more of a digital format, whether that's events, whether that's content, even marketing materials. And then in addition to that, you got to actually think that there are some times that we've actually had to really look at how do we actually do that customer interaction, whether that's shifting from print to digital because of the impact that we have, taking a look at how we actually are providing safe spaces if we actually do decide to have participation in some sort of a physical event. One of the things from a marketing perspective that we did is we went out there and we got a lot of PPP equipment that is actually branded with Bank of New York Mellon on it, right? The same thing that we did with these hand sanitizers, et cetera. And while that's not digital, what it does is that it enables us to be able to have that contact, and it ties into what's on top of mind for everybody, which is really around that whole pandemic component. Now, you got to remember, we don't do retail banking. So our interaction and our market focused at a business to business interaction. So it's somewhat probably unique as compared to, you know, our partners there at Visa, right? Because Visa is really looking across that spectrum to individuals as well as to corporations. We're very focused on asset management, asset managers, bond issuance for governance, et cetera. So the way we market is going to be somewhat different and unique as compared to those that have more of a retail presence.
Okay, it looks like we've got Matt back in the mix. Matt, just to bring you up to speed, we were talking about, you know, things that have changed as far as marketing campaigns or what you're doing on the marketing front over the past 8 months. You know, what has COVID changed for you day to day? Anything that you guys can talk about as far as things you've had to move or new opportunities that you've jumped on?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. I lost power. I don't know if they're fixing lines so I'm running on cellular and battery right now. So we'll do the best we can here. I say in terms of, I walked into the organization about 5-6 months ago. So I already kind of walked in kind of once all this started. I'd say in terms of what I you know, witnessed when I came in was, you know, completely, you know, changed the whole landscape for marketing, right? And I think one of the things I've learned really in supporting the CMO, having spent a lot of time in the past, you know, predominantly working with IT, is really the need for speed and agility in that space. And I think COVID really opens your eyes up to the need for how marketing does have needs where they do need to pivot and flex. You know, sometimes they will take advantage of it if you give them too much flexibility, right? So you need to have the right governance and swim lanes. But, you know, this has definitely been a year where, you know, we thought we were going to do certain types of sports advertising or other things like that. And, you know, also put us in a position where we have large sports sponsorships as a bank, you know, so how do you approach those partners and, you know, that are also going through a struggling time to, you know, ensure it's a fair arrangement for both parties, given that we're still paying yearly sponsorships and now there's no games, right, at certain stadiums that we sponsor or limited fans, right? So, you know, really put an interesting perspective on things. And meanwhile, we're going through a merger, merging two banks, redeveloping processes, et cetera. So definitely a lot to keep us busy.
Okay, Marilyn threw a question to us. She was saying, Donald, are you saying that the audits are done to determine the ROI of ad campaigns? And I know that's right in your wheelhouse, talking about, you know, not just a financial audit, like, are you stable, but, you know, are we getting the results we want? So can you talk more about performance?
Yes. The audits are done to look at return on investment, as well as what Joseph was talking about, making sure that we are hitting all the key pieces that we need to hit as part of the financial community. But yeah, we really try to focus on that return on investment. We really want to look at how effective and efficient it is when we do a campaign. So we've got those audit pieces built in. We've actually set up with our agencies accountable compensation, which is tied to these efficiency audits and the return on investment. So as well as a score, helps them out with their compensation.
So actually, yeah, straight performance driven. I want to change gears a little bit to ask everybody about, you know, how much of the spend comes directly through you, and how much, you know, do you have CEOs that go rogue or departments that go rogue? Like, how tight a rein do you have on what goes on? I will start with Joseph on that one.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. When you take a look at our organization, we have actually multiple companies that we own that are subsidiaries, but they're fully integrated. So as a tangible example, we own Pershing Financials. In the UK, we own Newton Financials. So a lot of people would never think of them as being part of Bank of New York Mellon. And so in order for us to be able to really kind of leverage that central brand, in order to be able to kind of drive the operational efficiency that we need, which are ultimately going to lower our costs and hopefully impact our earnings per share, what we've done is we've stood up what are called spend control towers. And those spend control towers essentially have what is called a capability owner assigned to them who can look horizontally across the portfolio, across activities, so that we're able to start looking at opportunities where we can actually do consolidation, where we can take a look at, you know, what are we doing, whether it be digital, print, et cetera, to make sure that we have a consistent approach across the geographies, think global, act local where necessary, but to make sure that what we're doing is we're not allowing for rogue activity. And so in order to do that, what we've done is we've actually created what we call front to back transparency, utilizing a taxonomy. So we actually have a 4-level taxonomy that enables us to tie to the general ledger and back into the markets. And what this enables us to do is to be able to take a look at that spend across the markets, take a look at the budgets within the various businesses that we have, and then take a look at where we actually have those supplier relationships, so that through the spend control tower, we're able to actually very quickly, without creating a delay, do the assessment, do the validation, allow for the project to move forward with our teams. And our teams, by the way, for marketing, my sourcing organization is embedded with the marketing teams. So they're sitting physically day in and day out with the marketing teams, because we felt that gives us a better synergy in order to be able to drive these outcomes. A little bit of a long-winded answer, but I think it's important that you understand that it's a very structured and a very measured approach to how we're actually managing the spend in this category.
Matt, how about for you guys? Is it the same kind of thing? And do you even have folks embedded right at the level, or is it more standard hierarchy? How does it work for you?
Yeah, so again, we're kind of going under a heavy lift right now. We're merging 2 banks. I'd say in one organization, they had a very more flexibility in terms of being able to buy things, negotiate on their own. The other organization that we're merging had a much more controlled approach from a risk perspective, but maybe not as much strategic involvement on the spend side. So now, in terms of with the current setup underneath the new Truist organization, we're all category based, right? So we have a centralized procurement organization. I lead the marketing and digital space, and then we have subcategories that are aligned underneath that. In terms of the way we're organized now, basically a business can't even contract with a supplier unless they go through our organization. So in terms of rogue spend, I would say fairly minimal in terms of their even ability to kind of go around that process. We have a lot of focus right now on cost controls as an organization that's merging. We have savings targets that we have to meet for the street. Obviously, with the economy right now, the low interest rate environment, we're trying to be prudent in terms of getting in front of that and then any potential impacts in terms of loan write-offs. So there's a lot of focus right now in really ensuring that we're embedded with the business and stakeholders understand the value, and we've delivered a tremendous amount of savings in a very short period of time. The other thing I focus on too and I think is very important in this marketing space, is really finding a win-win partnership with the CMO, so that they want to do business with you. They see you as a valued partner. And that's the other thing that I really focused on coming in here in my first few months was, hey, this isn't going to be a traditional approach where, we're going to come in, we're going to RFP things. Marketing's different. They do require speed and flexibility and agility in certain cases. It's been, exciting space. I'd say it's very non-traditional approaches in terms of how you would go after the spend. And what I'm really enabling to do is, get our supply base structured, appropriately in terms of who our preferred partners are. We had to do some rationalization and then build the process to where they have pre-negotiated rates. We have the governance controls and reporting on the back end where I can do benchmarking, do analysis on costs to allow them to do what they need to do in terms of transacting with the suppliers on a speedy basis, but also having the right governance and controls to ensure we're getting the horsepower we deserve out of these agencies and other partners.
Okay. And Donald Brett gave you a shout out for your work from home fashion sense. He says you're looking good. So
Yeah.
I'll throw that out there.
But usually I'm dressed more casual in this. So I said, all right, I'll do something in between.
Good. Donald, how about for you? What kind of stuff are you guys working on as far as keeping stuff consolidated and kind of keeping reins on everything?
So the interesting part about Visa is that, they went public maybe 14 years ago. So think about it as building everything together. The first thing that they locked down really well was the technology piece, right? The second part was all the non-tech. So from our perspective, our team on the marketing side, we've come into a place where what we used to do was tactical transactional work. The business would decide how they wanted to work, and it was, okay, execute this. So what we had to do is have a conversation and influence the business to say, hey, You now have people who understand how media is done, who understand how digital is done, who understand market research, and we can help add value to the decisions you need to make. So we started to, you think about a pyramid, right? And you've got at the bottom the transactions that happen, and then you have the tactical work like an RFX, an RFP, and then on top of that you have strategy, and then the pinnacle piece is the revenue generation, right? So the goal of sourcing, in my opinion, is how do we get from the tactical to generating revenue? And so what we've been doing over the past, I'd say 3 to 4 years under the leadership of Myth and my boss, Myth and Sharma, is we've been going from the tactical to the strategic. So I don't really see it as rogue spending as much as it is, can we influence you and can we help you so that you make better business decisions as you move forward, right? Because our business partners are going to make the decisions that they see fit. We have the opportunity to go to finance and say, I don't know if that was the best move, but it's better if we work with them to have that discussion, educate, and inform. So that's how we look at it. And then the other piece is, Visa also, you could look at it as a holding company, right? Like Visa Europe, they're doing their thing. LAC's doing their thing. Samia, AP, everyone's doing their thing. It's how do we get everyone together? How do we connect everyone and then start to drive an overarching strategy?
Yeah, just one more thing I want to push on that though. How far are you able to run with that? Are you even getting to the point where you can kind of combat some of that use it or lose it budget mindset, or is that too holy to touch?
No, the use it or lose it budget mindset, that is a tough one, right? When people were, look, it's my budget, I'm going to spend the money. Then you start to have a conversation around, hey, but this becomes a higher level discussion. And that is, you've got marketing things that you want to get done. You've got a bunch of money on this side and you've got a little money over here. If I can help to manage this money, to repurpose it to support these things, wouldn't that be beneficial? And so we start to have that conversation. We start to work with the business partners because some of them will say, I had a budget, you came in and you cut my budget by 20%. Why would I work with you again? And that's where finance says, hey, it was never your budget to begin with. It was the shareholders' money, and it was repurposed in a place where we could continue to grow and see a good return on investment of the dollar spent. Our whole piece is to maximize that dollar spend so that it's growing the business and it's helping, the SVPs and EVPs to hit the metrics that they need to hit. So it's a challenge sometimes, but part of it is that slow grind work of getting the business to work with you to allow you to have a seat at the table, right? And a wise person once told me, you don't ask to sit at the table, you just sit down and make it happen. And that's part of what has to happen, right? You have to embed yourself in the business so that they see you and know that you have the ability to do this.
Okay, I'm going to pause this for a second. We'll give attendees a chance to throw some questions into the Q&A. You can go ahead and submit questions over there if you have anything. And we're going to change gears over to privacy and some of the things that are going on that front. Unless the panelists, if you guys have anything you want to chime in back on what we've just said in the past couple minutes, if there's anything else you want to throw in. No, we're good. All right, on that front, like I said, we'll let the, here we go. Oh, interesting. Okay, Lisa asked, what are your biggest business challenges that you're looking to solve in 2021? We'll throw that to Joseph. What's the biggest problem you've got in front of you right now?
Well, in general, it's taking a look at the fact that we're a bank and the fact that we have low interest rates. That's going to obviously have a direct impact on our earnings, right? And so with that, every dollar, whether it's a marketing dollar or whether it's something for technology, is now going to be scrutinized. So really taking a look at how we're actually going to put in place a program of work that's going to enable us to reach the outcomes that we need in order to be able to continue to thrive in an environment where we know that it's going to be very difficult to continue the rate of growth that we've had. And I bring that up because I think as you start to talk about some of the privacy issues that are going to be coming in, making sure that we have the right platforms for secure communication are going to be investment opportunities for us. And that you say, well, how does that actually correlate with what you're doing from a marketing perspective? Well, when you think about the data privacy laws that are in effect in the countries where we're actually doing business, or you take a look at where we actually store the information, either in the cloud or in a private data center, there are legal requirements in particular markets that we have to comply with. And so when we start to think about that from a financial services privacy perspective, it becomes really important for us to kind of think about that. So for us, it's really, how do we actually continue the growth in terms of our bottom line with our cost optimization and risk maximization in a changing regulatory environment where privacy is becoming more and more of a theme. So for us, there's probably three key themes that we're dealing with. We are having to deal with the constraints associated with cost. We have to deal with risk because we're highly regulated, and it's probably a good thing. And third, we've got to take a look at the privacy information that we are collecting, both through our normal course of business as well as with our relationships with our suppliers. Okay,
and Matt, how about you? Biggest challenge that you've got in front of you right now?
I would say that, I'm walking into a new organization. We're launching a new brand, right? So we're not taking neither one of the bank brands. We're basically doing a heavy lift, rebranding a bank. So you could imagine the amount of activity we have going on right now with all of our agencies. And the same time, we have to maintain the two brands we have today, right? So because we'll start to see customer attrition if we don't market those brands and invest to them to a certain perspective. So our plan is to launch the new brand late next year. So obviously heavy lift in supporting marketing and really giving them the speed and agility to meet those timelines and targets, since we rely so heavily on our partners. Personally, in terms of challenges, opportunities, I'd say is really savings, right? So I'm really kind of building the foundation right now in terms of systems, processes, and tools. So other things I'm focused on are looking at savings opportunities with our agencies. We already did rate reductions in terms of hours. We're starting to look at efficiency. So really looking and understanding how long it's taking for them to do certain types of work, tying that to deliverables so that we could eventually, get to an average cost per deliverable. And we're using combination of techniques, using benchmarking, implementing a scope of work tool, and then also looking at our pass-through spend, right? Our pass-through spend is significantly, if you look at agency fees just in marketing, is a significant expense, right? It even outpaces most agency fees. So really looking to understand, benchmarking and understanding if we're getting the right TV rates, are we buying things in advance? And obviously that's a challenge right now because, in this current environment, to make far commitments in advance to buy certain advertising where, there may be some flexibility to move it around within the network or do certain things, really looking to see where we can plan better and really get more organized, bringing these two companies together and trying to look further out. In terms of, what you talked about earlier on the MarTech stuff, we look at application rationalization. That's going to be kind of a phase 2 for me. I'm really focused on agency spend on the marketing side of the house, getting them what they need so that they could rebrand, and then looking at the tech stack later to see where we can really identify efficiencies. But our IT partners have been great partners and are looking at this from an application rationalization, categorization perspective. And we have a good roadmap in place. It's more or less about where we can maybe squeeze costs out of those providers longer term.
Yeah, that makes sense. Donald, on the list for keeping you up at night, what's the biggest thing going?
I would say keeping me up, but I will say that I agree with Matt. Finding savings going into 2021 is a challenge because 2020, we were able to pull some parachutes and say, oh, I got to cut this, I got to cut that. So we're already going in pretty lean into 2021. Where some of the opportunities exist that I think we can drive, I'm going to say, is inclusion and diversity. Really beefing up the opportunity to drive inclusion and diversity when we have discussions with our business partners and they say, hey, I want to look at this campaign, or I want to do this type of production. Can we open it up and look at bidding out more of these items as opposed to just going to the trusted and tried, and this is who we usually use. It's, hey, let's start to open it up and see who else is out there. And by doing that and also driving the inclusion and diversity piece, it helps us to, potentially find some good solutions out there that may not have been thought of before. So that's one of the ways that we're looking to, drive a more efficient way in which our marketing team is spending money.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah, I do. We definitely want to jump into privacy a little bit here, and there's a lot of stuff going on, both individual privacy, and then having corporate governance, a bunch of different things on the marketing front. I guess, Joseph, tell us what are you working on with that, and what are you concerned about? What do you have to get in line to keep marketing on the straight and narrow?
Well, when you think about that, customer communications are essentially one of the key areas where we have to really kind of think about what that privacy is going to look like, right? Because in many instances, there's financial information that's being pushed. And so for us, we really put a huge emphasis on the digitization and digital distribution versus print relative to that from a client perspective. So that's one area, okay? Again, secondarily, data and analytics kind of falls into that privacy. And you're like, well, why is that? It's because we're aggregating information across certain classes of customers across multiple geographies. And we have to be very careful because in certain instances, you have to comply, well, not in all instances, you have to comply with local regulatory requirements, which may prohibit you from being able to do some commingling or actually where putting where that data is actually stored. So that makes it a bit difficult for some of that horizontal analytics that you want to put into place. And then tertiary, you got to really make sure that you have a good secure communication stack for how you're actually going to be communicating with some of these customers. Okay, and so as we're going through that we're looking at the enhancements in our capabilities from a digital perspective. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we're reducing our stack and increasing our security threshold, because one of the most valuable assets for any financial institution can be boiled down to one word: trust. Okay, and if you lose the trust by a market event, that is going to have a domino effect across a myriad of solutions that you're trying to provide. So for us, really making sure that we're able to fortify, codify, analyze, and communicate effectively is really, really key for what we're trying to do around our content, around our experience, and how we're actually driving our analytics, our campaigns, our lead generation, our sales and enablement, et cetera. So privacy is obviously probably the single most important component of any financial transaction: privacy with security.
Right. And now, Matt, the only thing that sounds worse to me than doing privacy and compliance would be doing it for two organizations trying to merge together at the same time. So is this actually an opportunity, though? Does it give you the ability to kind of get more done in one shot, or is it as bad as I think it might be?
Well, I mean, so in terms of our privacy lens, right? So I'd say where I really am looking mostly in terms of where my hat's involved is really on our third-party risk management. Privacy-wise, we have great legal support and other folks in privacy that are looking to ensure, as we, all the things that Joseph mentioned, that we're reaching out to customers appropriately and looking at those lenses. We're going through a merger right now, so we're taking a very conservative approach of ensuring that we're being very diligent in our risk matrix, right? And where I'm trying to find that right balance is ensuring that we're not overcompensating to where, as we accommodate for risk around our supply base and some upfront, procedures to engage with a supplier, contract with supplier, that we're not overtaxing the system to where it's unnecessarily reducing speed to market for our marketing organization, right? So it's really finding that right balance where we can set up fast path swim lanes to do POCs and certain types of engagements while still being aligned to, the third-party risk program that, we're a regulated bank, have auditors, et cetera. We want to do the right thing for not only for our company, our shareholders, and our customers, but ensuring that we really get that getting that win-win scenario for all parties.
Okay, Donald, I want to check in with you on that too and hear about what you've got going on with Visa and as far as privacy and security. But I just do want to mention we've got about 7 minutes left before we have to give the room up to the next group in. So if you've got any questions, throw them in now. And even if we don't have time to get to them, if we don't get through the whole queue, we can go over into the Slack group and to the networking forum over there, and we can talk in a thread and answer any other questions that we don't get to. But yeah, Donald, back to you, privacy and security. What's going on?
Yeah, I think Joseph did an excellent job kind of outlining it, and that is it's the trust. And as soon as that's broken, you don't get it back. So, I think Matt and Joseph they nailed it. I'm saying ditto. So let's get to some of these questions.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. Pankaj is back again asking about, we had mentioned financial audits. He was talking about audit of the agency and its contract terms. So I guess when you're digging right into the paper, when you're setting up a relationship with a new agency, what are you seeing over there, and what kind of standards do you have to lock things down and keep things in shape? Throw it to Joseph.
Sure. Again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk about it from the life cycle of what's called third-party risk management, because we at the bank actually have a five-stage life cycle. Okay, we have planning, we have due diligence, we have contracting, we have ongoing monitoring, and we have termination. I bring that up because it's on the onset of that relationship, when you're doing the planning and the due diligence, that's where you're actually looking at it. So you have to take a look at how that relationship is going to be structured. So you're looking at it in terms of the contract from the managed terms. You're also taking a look at it in terms of their financial viability. So we call it a financial viability risk assessment. And if they're providing a solution to you that may be cloud enabled, we are doing actual audits on how that fourth party, could be somebody like Amazon, it could be somebody like Microsoft on the back end, who are their cloud providers. And then we take a look at it also in terms of concentration risk to see how this is working across the portfolio. So there's a tremendous amount of due diligence that we're doing before we actually can get into a process to execute a contract, because we really want to understand what is the risk of the supplier, but more importantly, what is the risk of the specific engagement that you're entering into? Because risk is at the engagement level. It's interesting at the supplier level, but you may have, and we've codified things into critical, high, moderate, low, and nominal. Okay, and so what we're wanting to understand is that depending on what type of information or what activity is going to happen, that's going to trigger that risk view. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but this is the kind of work that my teams have to look at as we're going forward, and we're trying to determine between two suppliers or three or four, or a current supplier, how we actually want to engage them on a go-forward basis. And so there's going to be a lot of due diligence, either on site or remotely, looking at their policies, looking at their financials, taking a look at what historical scorecards we may have with them. So it's not just about price. Okay, and you say, well, what the heck does this have to do with marketing? It's again, it goes to what data might we be providing to them from a client list that we're going to try and get to. So it ties back into that privacy component that you're talking about. So for us, third-party risk management is something that regulators are extremely focused on, and it's something that we do within the DNA of our ecosystem of our supply chain to make sure that we're putting in place a supply base that is streamlined, robust, and that is able to meet the standards that we're trying to put in place around the different activities. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Yeah, we'll throw it to Donald and Matt too. If either of you have anything else on that, is there anything you want to push further there?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of audits, I'm mainly looking for savings, right? So I'm going to go to the financial piece and I'll talk to the risk. So, really getting a better understanding of our agencies spend a lot of money on our behalf, so we want to ensure that they're being upfront with those things. They're also securing competitive rates, so we are looking at ways to really validate that, which may impose audits. From a third-party risk management approach, I think to Joseph's point, we do a lot of due diligence on the front end. Where I'm trying to find the balance is, marketing oftentimes finds these creative things they want to do, right? So we may have a risk profile set up for a supplier, and it's really ensuring that we set the right swim lanes up, that they stay within the swim lane. So, they're not coming up with some new, brilliant, innovative idea and using one of their ad agencies that, of course, says they can do anything, right? And then going outside the risk profile of the engagement that I structured, right? So those are the type of scenarios that make it very hard for an organization to give marketing that speed and agility they need, is when you run into scenarios like that where they they overstepped the line, and now we've done something that potentially could pose the organization a risk. So it's really about really getting that set up and aligning as to what the work's going to be involved with the supplier, making sure we stay in the swim lanes. And then if we are proposing doing something net new or something where we're going to, really take on additional risks, that we know we're running it through the right proper process, so that we could do the due diligence necessary on the front end. And of course, that could incur audits based on the criticality of the supplier of the organization, on-site audits. We do a lot of due diligence as a financial organization on our supply base to ensure that we're mitigating those risks appropriately, and we understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, Donald, you got the final 30 here. Go ahead.
Real quick, it takes a long time for someone to become a supplier for us because risk, cybersecurity, pen test, all that stuff has to happen. But there's an additional step of due diligence that happens when the SOWs go through, because risk, cybersecurity, they review the SOW as well. If the SOW of what has been approved doesn't match what they were onboarded for, then they have to go through another process. So there's a lot of work that we go through to make sure that from a privacy place, from a secure place, we're good. And so that's the challenges that exist. So, understand working in the financial industry, it's going to take time for you to get onboarded as a potential supplier. But once you get on, hopefully you're in a good place.
All right. I want to thank Donald, Joseph, and Matt for joining us today. And of course, thanks to Michael and Tina from Procurement Foundry for setting us up today to do this panel and get things going. We'll be over in the Zoom group in the networking session. I'll stop in over there. We appreciate your time today, though, and we're going to open up this room for the next session. I'll hand over to Tina. Thanks and have a good day.
Everybody, thank you very much. This was a fantastic panel. It was a great way to end the day. I'm glad everybody came.